There was another time when you said leave it here and it was a different bag.
And I
This
did
one.
take it.
Oh, you did. The Easter eggs, I will report to you, were used for children who didn't come to church on Easter, which was a terrible thing.
Yeah.
I heard about it anyway,
Well, they were bought.
but then I took them to the Council of Ministers meetings.
Oh.
And they were consumed within 48 hours, I reckon.
Right, well, if I'd known, you could have got a couple more. Although last time we provided some, they didn't pay us today. They ordered some and then didn't pay for them, so, oh well. How many freebies can you?
See you.
We didn't invoice them, probably.
What, Mary?
We didn't invoice them.
You won't want me here, would you?
It's just.
Yeah,
that,
go
you know,
down there
people
somewhere.
specifically
No, no, you-
order them, you kind
I'm
of
just gonna
expect
talk
them.
and you get to get a little slight preview of what I'm gonna say next, because it's right here.
Oh, okay.
Don't cheat.
Well, I better not read too far ahead because then I'll miss what.
Yes, that's, yeah. It's like for me, when it's PowerPoint and they put the thing up, then I'm just such a compulsive reader. I just read what's up there and I
Then
don't
you lose what they're
I'm
saying.
losing what they're saying,
Yes.
which is probably exactly what's up there, but
It's so easy done.
yeah.
Something said and it, you know, well, with me anyway, it set you on the path
Yes.
with whatever that was. And
Yep.
then you realise you weren't listening to what.
But they actually have been listening to.
Yes.
I know, I got the phone call from Brian just after
Yeah,
the hospital.
so
Yeah.
She'd done in front of you.
He'd, well, said he'd had he'd injured his
She helped.
leg and
While you were there, she helped.
fairly
She was
deeply.
breaking.
Anyway, they.
Perfect timing.
Yes.
This was the
So,
It's got to go every day.
sewing basket that Grandma Hilden made.
Oh, I have
It's
one
rusted
nailed
and
in.
broken and whatever, but
Yeah.
I just
Every day, so.
pulled the fabric
Get
off.
an indoor
Oh, okay.
Yeah, put that on the you know, they do
Their
breathing
bases
as
in
they
my
do.
base.
Yeah, it's got one.
Yeah, mine was all
But then
perished.
the leg.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the basket's
Yeah.
Just for,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
But that, maybe they say.
But I'm thinking you bring things back to me because
Here,
that's
when
my
you
box,
say you
but it's
write
not
it,
my
you
box,
read
you
it,
have the
but
same box
you're
and
moving now.
you have your own
But I
box.
mean, yeah.
I have my own.
I get it.
So-
I don't say either because I haven't heard
So
it.
I was due for a Near's birthday.
And
made
A
her.
Near, no.
Oh.
just
Where-
happened it was
oh,
Saturday.
She did 10-pin bowling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Saturday. And
Where did
then,
you got off the train at,
but then there was an
Oakley.
art party at her house because
there was a-
I had an optometrist
You
appointment.
mean
Ah,
Michelle's house?
Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah.
It's too long to tell you.
I had an
the
optometrist
story,
appointment
but
and then
I'll tell you
Why-
what
Mum and Dad didn't want to go to the bowling.
No.
obviously it
Bit
all
too
worked
loud
out
for the hearing aids.
eventually, because
It was
here
just
you are.
the two streets around long from,
Oh,
yeah,
In-
Carmel.
right. There you go. You knew. Uh-huh.
Oh, I didn't prepare a devotional opening of the word and stuff. Is that an expectation?
We don't do open words, you can open with a prayer if you like. We
I'll
don't
open with
give
a prayer.
always do that.
Or you can end with one, whatever.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Margaret, we can't see you.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to find out myself.
And it's okay. Oh, there you are. I don't have the big TV screen up, so nobody else can see you but me until I turn my computer around anyway.
Well,
But,
Owen's here, but he's resting in bed.
nice.
Okay.
He just had a physio.
Oh, and your back is here.
Crank your volume up.
Oh, she comes to the house.
Oh, of course.
So. This works.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Roz.
She is.
Look at this camera.
Oh, yeah, the next.
I was looking at Margaret.
I can see all you guys.
We'll make.
I can hear you.
Yeah, Owen can hear you.
Oh, hi, Owen.
Hopefully. That does the job. All right, 11:03, we're doing well.
Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, just as a speaker, if you address the audience, That's what you look
That's
at,
a-
not this.
Okay.
I know, it's like high tech.
Right, and can everyone,
You need a little flag on top of it.
yeah, and can everyone
Red
see me
flashing
on the
light.
computer? That was my other concern, was that I would just be like little eyes peering over the top.
That would be funny.
Yes. Well, then let us gather for a moment of prayer. Divine One, I thank you for bringing us together in a spirit of learning and of fellowship. Open our hearts and minds to where you are guiding us during our time together. In your beautiful name I pray. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Amen.
So the title of this talk, as you may have seen, is The Journey to Self-Discovery. And I'll say that last week I did an informal survey of 4 new church people to get their reaction to the title. When you hear that title, The Journey to Self-Discovery. And based on my very informal research, I'd say that 100% of Swedenborgians think that it's a good thing. That did not have, that only had a positive response to that title. So I kind of want to increase my N number and see if I get the same result. Oh, if Joel was here, he would appreciate the statistical ones. So just thinking about that title, The Journey to Self-Discovery, and how that impacts you. For how many of you, hands up, if it's only a positive thing?
Only a positive.
It's a positive thing, like you're just like, oh yeah, journey to self-discovery, woo, let's go. Or not even let's go, but like,
the
it's a
name,
good-
okay, yeah, not the
just
process.
the title.
Well,
Is
we've
that,
already-
does that sound like a positive
I
thing?
can't vote because I've voted before.
Sure.
So hands up, 1, 2,
Yeah,
3, 4, 5.
I mean, like, I feel like you're setting me up.
Yeah,
because
right.
I know that self-discovery is scary and terrifying when you realize.
Yeah. No, but just, okay. So is there anybody that this is only a negative thing? Like you hear that title, Journey to Self-Discovery, and you're like, oh, don't want to learn about it. Don't wanna, like, this is not good. Or it's not a good topic.
Getting these answers before we hear them.
Yeah.
Come on.
The other people.
Survey.
are
You might-
present,
you might be,
It's not-
you
You
know,
might do it again.
It's
at
not
the end.
based on the,
opening it up and
Not-
scaring us. but-
Okay, let's say,
it's not based on what's in it, it's based on if you would like to go to a class that was called it.
Oh, right.
Well, he's here.
yeah. And then hands up if you had mixed reactions, like some positive, some negative. I'm the only one.
I didn't initially until I started thinking about it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Now.
So I'm gonna say, I can no longer say 100% of Swedenborgians think it's positive.
Too
So,
much information.
Well, we did have discussions and
yes,
solidified the, or the.
we had quite a Helden discussion,
Yeah,
because it was all Heldens.
Oh.
we distilled the topic name
Yeah.
down.
Just-
So,
Right. Well, so my mixed reactions are that I've seen great outcomes in people's lives when they do what I'm gonna call the popular journey to self-discovery. Like, who am I? What am I really about? That kind of thing.
Sure.
So that's good.
I-
But I have a negative side too. Did you have a negative side too?
No, I just think, in general, if you had asked me, if I had been asked without kind of being in this environment, is that a good title? I'm like, yeah, this is a great title, thumbs up. But I think because of the way you were bringing it up.
Yeah.
you know,
Oh,
what-
where is she
you know,
going?
How are you trying to trick me?
Well, I'll say the truth is, now the negative sort of thoughts that came up, like anything to do with self, proprium, love of self. Like that's self is not a good thing. I don't want to have anything to do with it. This is not where I'm going, like that. So and I'm gonna call that the proprium journey to self-discovery. Ooh, just because I'm contrasting to popular, proprium. Maybe there's a better word for popular, but that's the term that I use. The populace uses it. So those are the two kind of journeys that I want to look at today. So I'll start off with the popular self-discovery. And just looking at the positive side of that, like I said, I think there's a lot of value in sorting out who the real you is and who you would rather be, and how you might become a more authentic person. But that would also involve looking at the sort of habitual ways that you think or act or feel that kind of hold you back from being that better version of yourself. And that better version of yourself in psychology is sometimes called self. It's the self-actualization process. And it's like at the top of the Maslow triangle, when you can really know who you are and be who you are. And yeah, just a lot of value in becoming more joyfully useful, to put it more or less in Swedenborgian terms.
So yeah, all that, I'm in favor of.
Yes. How to be a better vessel for divine inflow, like into you and through you, like all that, very good. And just my observation of people's lives sometimes, very often sort of at the end of the sort of high school ages, beginning of being a young adult in uni or whatever, sort of superficial look at, well, who am I? Like, what do I want to study? What do I want to study? Do I want to just start working? Where do, that's the sort of the first self-knowledge. So it can happen early. I know when I was 8, I had thoughts about what kind of career I wanted, but that one. But later on, after some life experience and making choices and stuff, I think often people go into a sort of a deeper sort of journey of self-discovery, and it might be after going through a time of confusion or struggle of some kind in their life, or sometimes it can be a dramatic life-changing event, like getting fired from your job, or a relationship problem, or a cancer diagnosis, a health problem. Something dramatic might start somebody questioning, who am I? Not so much why is this happening to me, not that journey, but they're like, well, who am I in this situation? And who have I been? And I think for a lot of us, it could just be a slow process of just through life, moving through various states of unhappiness in our external life. A little dysthymia, you might call it, and just wondering about that, and whatever, like just more of a slow, not a dramatic thing, finding out exactly what brings joy and trying to follow that. And I know some people, it's usually young males, but not always, like go on some kind of massive travel trek up to the top of the mountain and discover themselves. I think that's one way that it can happen, or it could just be through volunteerism or any other way of useful service with a group that you sort of find yourself. You find what really is bringing you joy. And it can be just a slow awareness, or it can be an aha moment. But these are just the kind of things that I've noticed. And so some of the positive outcomes that I've seen are career changes, like Todd, right? You had a career change, finding yourself.
I did.
Yep. Or change in religious affiliation or engagement. And that could either like just changing who you affiliate with, or deciding to become more active, or deciding to withdraw. Changes in relationship dynamics, often in an intimate relationship, but not always. Changes in social circle. I know, not to tell facts about John's life, but he tells this anyway, but he in high school at the beginning, he was one of those kids that the teachers were looking at like, oh, what's he going to do next? Like, he's a bit of a crazy one. How are we going to bring him in? And then when he was 16, he came to the Hurstville Society for 6 months. Met Angela, started coming to church and singing loudly. And anyway, it was transformational for him to be here, be involved in a small church group instead of in the anonymousness of Brenathan and the school system here. Anyway, he went back to high school and just divorced himself from his old set of friends and found new friends, a new social circle. And like at the end, when he graduated, Scott Dom, the principal, said, we don't really have an award for the, hang on, what's that term you use in sports for the player that's Most improved. We don't have a most improved player award, but if we did, it would go to John. And then he told everybody the whole story. Well, he left out the whole school, but he just said,
Bless out Angela.
he left out some of those details, but just said there was a change in roots now. So changes in social circle, changes in political affiliation, maybe new hobbies and creative outlets. For some people, a good outcome is new or strengthened advocacy or activism. If one of the ladies in the home church that has definitely done that and taken on political activism in a big way, or better decision making, or better health, taking care of yourself kind of things, all good outcomes that I've seen. And I think that there are negative outcomes, or can be negative outcomes to this popular self-discovery journey. Does anybody have any thoughts about?
Losing people that have been in your life all the time because you've changed and they haven't on the same trajectory.
Yep.
Yeah, good one. The hesitant to say this, but like, I have seen some people get involved in modern self-help stuff and taken it to a me first approach.
Yeah.
They kind of become self-obsessed almost,
Right.
there's that balance between healthy self-esteem and
Inflated self-esteem.
yeah, right. Egocentrism.
Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah, I was thinking of that of strengthening self-serving behaviors in an effort to I have to take care of myself and then overdoing it. Becoming almost narcissistic kind of behavior. When I was training for clinical pastoral education, they would always talk about the belly button syndrome, because in clinical pastoral education, you have to look inside and find all kind of things about yourself so that you can better serve other people. And then some people just get so interested in that they're just looking at their belly button.
Navel gazing.
Navel gazing, yeah, okay, belly button syndrome. But some people can get really distressed when they start paying attention and notice negative things, negative self-talk, what do they call that? The internal tyrant. Or, oh my goodness, I am self-serving all the time. It can be very distressing when you go on what I'm calling the popular journey to self-discovery, to find out things about yourself that you didn't know and that you don't like. Or feeling inadequate. Oh my, when I look inside, I'm not good at anything, or my way of dealing with things isn't good. So those are potential downsides of doing that sort of self-discovery. So, of course, being in this setting, I'm going to look at some of the teachings and the writings that I think are relevant to that popular sort of journey. And what I'm going to look at first is dominant loves, which are also called ruling loves in some of the older translations. And starting with Secrets of Heaven. 8853. In everyone, there is something their own, which they love above all things. It is called that which is dominant, or if you will, that which reigns universally with them. It is unceasingly present in their thought and also their will, and it composes their very life. I know a lot of times when I've heard those kind of numbers, and I'm pretty sure this one does too, I can't remember exactly, but it breaks down to there's just only 4 kind of dominant loves, 2 that are hellish and 2 that are heavenly. But I also think there's other numbers that indicate that then breaks down very specifically for everybody. So a little earlier, actually, in Secrets of Heaven, 6872. Everyone's character is recognized from their love. For the inner being or essay of anyone's life is love. Their very life emanates from it. Therefore, the kind of love that reigns with a person determines the person's character. So I'm just sort of reverse engineering that a little bit. just from personal experience, you know that everybody's got a different character, everyone's different. So that would mean that the kind of love that's motivating them would be different. It isn't, okay, kind of love specifically that's motivating them in their life is individual. You can group all of those motivations into the 4 general dominant loves. But the takeaway for me here is it's different for everyone. And in fact, Heaven and Hell talks about it, but in terms of pleasure, it's just what this part of the book is talking about in 486. There are different pleasures, as many, generally speaking, as there are different dominant loves, which means as many as there are of us and of spirits and angels, since no one's dominant love is entirely like that of anyone else. So there you go. You didn't have to reverse engineer that one, just said it straight out.
But it's nice when what you think that's actually backed up.
Yeah, like I had to search, but I found it. No one's dominant love is entirely like that of anyone else, which is why, I mean, if it was that simple, there's only 1 of 4, pretty good chance that you'd pick it, I think.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've always interpreted it as, yeah, there's these main categories, but
Right.
variations on a theme kind of.
Yes. Yep. So just taking that perspective, popular self-discovery could be just identifying what loves from the divine truly motivates you. And following those loves to wherever the divine will take you when you follow that. But it also would involve identifying the false or unhelpful ideas and feelings and actions that have prevented you from following your own true dominant love. Yeah. Like, I remember hearing this story of a man who started journaling his dreams when he woke up every morning, and he found through looking at his dreams that he actually loves gardening, even though he'd never been a gardener, but he was constantly having dreams about plants growing and stuff like that. And what had held him back was he didn't want to get his hands dirty. It was like, I never,
Well, they invented gloves.
yeah, well, he was like, I didn't want to get out there in the dirt. But then he started doing it and he loved it. And I think he actually, well,
Dirty hands and all, huh?
yeah, dirty hands and all. But I think, you know, from this perspective of looking at, you know, what your loves are, even though you might also, you probably would need to look at what's holding you back and work on that as well, or ask the divine to help you work on that. I think it would be important to give priority to what is helpful and life-giving, because that's where the divine is. Sort of like energy flows where attention goes. If what you discover is that you're addicted to sugar, don't keep focusing on I'm addicted to sugar. Everywhere I look, there's sugar, you know, instead of like whatever the other love is. But I want to be healthy. Look at all these healthy things I'm doing. Something like that. Okay, and then another set of teachings that I think is relevant to this is the exploration that happens in the world of spirits. So back to Heaven and Hell, 426. There is a vast number of people in the world of spirits, because that is where everyone is first gathered, where everyone is examined and prepared.
Did you say prepared or repaired?
Prepared for the repair. Yeah. In some parts of my life, that has been a scary concept, to be suddenly becoming so transparent. That you're being examined, you can't hide anything, and you're being prepared for something and you don't know what it is, but you're going through this. The analogy that comes to mind is when you drive through the car wash, like you get all spiffed up and you don't know if at the end it's going to be totaled or whatever. I don't know. I've never had a car totaled in the car wash, but like, good. Anyway, but then also knowing that it's angels that are helping you doing that, you know. And having worked with therapists and counselors and chaplains and stuff, knowing that it's possible to be examined and prepared in a loving way, and it doesn't have to be scary. Okay. Then the very next number in heaven and hell, 427. After we die, just as soon as we arrive in the world of spirits, we are carefully sorted out by the Lord. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure if this is an English speaking or American speaking person who, I think this might be dull, sorted out, not like I'm gonna sort you, but like put into.
Yeah, well, cause, yeah, Australia used something sorted out, you know,
Yeah.
they'll say it much more colloquially than
Mm.
I never heard that in the States.
Mhm.
I think
No.
that's what you're getting at.
Yeah,
right?
right, that,
Yeah.
an Aussie usage would have,
No,
Jen,
I
I'm gonna take you
Get
into the
sorted.
back room and get you
You sort
sorted
it
out.
out,
Yeah, as opposed to
sorting
everybody's
into
we're sorting into
Yeah,
categories. Mm.
Yeah, there's a little more personal.
Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think it means,
Or can't you just sort yourself out?
Yeah.
You never
Yeah.
heard that expression?
Well, I mean, to me, I mean, I feel like I must have, but
Yeah.
at the same time, they're both one and the same, like just figured out or straightened out or, I don't know,
Yeah.
anyway.
well, you can see how they.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyways, but to me, this is a little bit more confronting if you think that as soon as you get to the world of spirits, you're gonna be sorted out by the Lord.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, evil people are immediately connected with the hellish community their ruling love had affiliated them with in the
Well, I
world.
think that proves that they're sorting.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, this is,
Sorted.
yeah, no, yeah,
Into
yeah,
categories.
no, I'm pretty sure this is a George Dole
Right.
translation.
English, right.
He's using American English. And good people are immediately connected with the heavenly community that their love and thoughtfulness and faith had affiliated them with in the world. While people are in the world of spirits, they are brought into states like the ones they were in during their physical lives, one after another. After a while, though, they settle into a constant state that accords with their ruling love. So anyway, I mean, that's to me is saying your life is going through all kind of different states, and you may never in this world, as you're going through all kind of different states, really know what your ruling love is. You know, you won't necessarily get to a place where you're just acting 100% out of whatever your ruling love is. There'll be some variation. So that's what makes me think that maybe this popular self-discovery might be a sort of a precursor to the self-discovery that happens in the world of spirits. Before you end up being aware of the community that you're of the people with the same dominant
Yeah.
love. Yeah. Because apparently you're assigned straight away, or you right away you're connected with them, but then you just keep on going through these kind of natural states till you figure it out which one you want, and then you follow that path. So it might be sort of helpful. If you have any qualms about the self-discovery that happens in the world of spirits, to start it now, do some kind of precursor work, get ready. Try to be transparent so that you're used to it.
Be honest with yourself.
Yeah, and honest with other people, you know,
Mhm.
and that's hard. It's sometimes hard. Well, for me, I find that hard. Anyway,
I used to, but I don't anymore.
you don't mind being,
Honestly.
yeah, right. Have you had a 40th birthday? Because a lot of people find that after
I
they're
had a
40.
cancer diagnosis.
Yes, so there you go. Yeah,
It puts things into perspective. So. Yes, make you really be honest with myself actually helps, because then you can be honest with everybody else.
yeah. Yeah, well, there's a lot there to
Mm.
unpack. Okay, so now I want to turn my attention, your attention, our attention to the other kind of journey, the proprium self-discovery. Which is, like I said, was the sort of negative place that also came, or approach that came to my mind, like, why would you want to look at yourself? Or why would you want to look at your proprium? Like, or why would you revel in it or encourage it? So I just do want to say that there are several different ways that that word proprium has been translated. Okay, one thing I learned in looking at this is that proprium is not just a term that's used in Swedenborg or whatever. It's a veterinary or whatever term, whatever, like, they'll talk about, scientists will talk about different species of animals and what their proprium is like, what the specific characteristics are of that species, so in a sense, there might be a sort of a general proprium that we have as humans that's different than other people.
Well, I was just thinking, I hadn't thought of it in veterinary terms, but like, if you think of how animals are given a Latin species name and whatnot, you know, and so therefore using a Latin word like proprium in that context
Yes.
is consistent, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, you know, cats, what's the proprium of cat kind of thing? What's their general, you know, as of themselves, right?
Yes.
Themselves, it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, where a species would have that.
Yeah, I always just thought it was this term that Swedenborg came up with, right? So the older translations, because they didn't, whatever, I don't know why, but they would just put proprium in there, use that word, even though it's not really an English word. I don't know if they did that in French translations and things like that. I can only speak about the English ones, but proprium was just put in there. But more recent translations would say what is one's own or self-image or sense of self or selfhood, which to me brings more of that idea that it's something about yourself rather than appropriate. Anyway. So appropriate discovery could just be a journey to discovering what your initial flawed sense of self is. And then moving from that to a less flawed sense of self. And so, unlike my initial response, that was that appropriate journey would not be a good thing. Paying attention to your appropriate in that way. After thinking about it and reading about it, I think it could be a positive journey, sort of out of that initial proprium condition to a better one. So here's some teachings that I think are relevant. The first one is about hellish selfhood. The initial one. Secrets of Heaven 2:10. To explain what selfhood is, human selfhood is everything evil and false that wells up out of self-love and materialism. What I really noticed in this is it's the stuff that wells up out of self-love and materialism. So it doesn't mean that your selfhood is entirely evil and false, only that part of your selfhood that comes from a love of self and materialism. Because I think I pretty much grew up with like, your proprium is evil and false. 100%, nothing good, but I think it's limited to anything that comes up from self-love and materialism. The result is nothing but evil and falsity. This then is a human selfhood, which in itself is hellish and damnable. Ooh. And so Heaven and Hell 591, part of it talks about that hellish first proprium. All the spirits who are in the hells are in their own self-image, and everyone's own self-image is nothing but evil. And since it is nothing but evil, it is hell. And I think in that journey of self-discovery, sometimes we find that I am living in a hell that I have created for myself, or that is myself. But luckily, there's also a heavenly proprium or a heavenly selfhood. And so that number 591 in Heaven and Hell also says, angels who are in the heavens are all kept out of their self-image and kept in the Lord's image, which is goodness itself. So that's where the journey takes you. Instead of having your own flawed, evilly based sense of self, you end up with the Lord's image, which is goodness itself. Similarly, AE 313, angels are not angels from what is their own, but from the divine good and the divine truth that they receive. And so the same would be for us. You might say, when we're in an angelic state, we're not in that state from what is our own, but from the divine good and the divine truth that we're receiving in that state. And there's another number here from AE further on 946. When a person shuns and turns away from evils as sins and is raised up into heaven by the Lord, they are no longer in what is their own, but in the Lord, and thus they think and will what is good. And so that's not just angels, it's us. When we have moments or extended periods of time, when we are lifted up into a heavenly state, we're not in what is our own. We're not influenced by that hellish opium, but we're in the Lord and we're thinking and willing what is good. And hopefully in this appropriate journey, that becomes the kind of sense of self that we can maintain a lot of the time. I don't know if anyone can ever do it all of the time. That's when you get sorted in the world of spirits. Okay, and another teaching would be apparent autonomy, which is a more recent-ish way of translating what was previously called the as of self or the as if of self. Apparent autonomy. Or another one, there's another one about independence, seeming independence. I think Chadwick used to use seeming independence. Divine Providence 3:21. A law of divine providence says that we are to think in apparent autonomy and act prudently in apparent autonomy, but are to recognize that this comes from the Lord. Quite a trick. It's quite a trick. How often does,
Right, it doesn't come naturally.
doesn't come naturally. I think it comes more often in hindsight. Like, oh yeah, especially, I don't know if you've probably all had this experience where somebody will say to you, when you said blah, 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 or when you did that thing for me, like, I'll never forget it. It had such an impact. You're like, what? Did I say that? Did I do that? It must have been the Lord because it wasn't me, like that. Here's a number from Survey of the Teachings of the New Church. And I think that was previously called Brief Exposition of the Teachings.
I've not heard that title before.
Yeah, it's probably a New Century, maybe. So, I don't know.
Sounds like it.
Sounds like it. Anyway, it's in the writings somewhere. Briefly put, take action on your own and yet trust that the Lord is helping you. This is what it means to take action seemingly on your own. The ability to act on our own is not an attribute we were created with. Being able to act on one's own is an attribute that belongs to the Lord alone, who constantly grants it to us. But I like that very briefly put. Rather more direct than you normally see, I think, in the writings. Take action on your own and yet trust that the Lord is helping you. And well, apparent autonomy is important in this journey because we might feel that we are doing the work of journeying from the initial hellish proprium to the heavenly one, but really, do the work, do the searching, do what you need to do, but trust that it's the divine that's doing it. And similar to that is that the teaching is that everything that we identify with ourselves is really the divine. Also, not easy to do. The sense of self, which is granted to us for a very good reason, makes it difficult, to identify that really it's the divine in us. Here we go with Divine Providence 42. The more closely we are united to the Lord, the more clearly we seem to have our own identity, and yet the more obvious it is to us that we belong to the Lord. I know I've tended to hear that teaching more in terms of celestial angels, that they're very close to the divine, and that they totally get that everything that they're doing and feeling is from the divine, yet they have a stronger sense of self than even us down here on the planet. Like, how can that be?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah, I looked at that one myself. Okay, if you say so.
Yeah, I'm not there now, and maybe someday y'all won't get it, but this one's about us. The more closely that we're united with the divine, the more we have a sense of our own identity and that we belong to the Lord, which makes us feel stronger in who we are. I guess I can see it from the sense of confidence in yourself, that if you really have done that work, you're living more most of the time in the heavenly appropriate, and that you can trust yourself to be a vessel of the divine.
The analogy I have for myself in my head is, if you imagine, the Lord's the sun and sunlight goes everywhere, right?
Mhm.
And you're kind of a ray, in theory, of sunshine, right?
Yeah.
And as you hit the ground and your ray is on the petal of the rose or whatever it is that it lands, you are conscious of what you are doing.
Mhm.
You're clear of where your source is, but you have a clear purpose of like giving that rose or whatever, live food, whatever. But if you're detached from the Lord, you don't have that sense of connecting back, and therefore your purpose isn't as bright and shiny as clear. So that's kind of how I've made peace with it, trying to understand the individuality and the connection holding it at the same time. It's like there is this sunlight everywhere, and yet you're this particular focused being. So
That's aware of its connection as well as its impact.
So
That's a good.
you can hang on to that and let me know if you find flaws in it. but that's where I. Yeah. Well, that's the world of politics going over. Allowing everything.
Right.
Yeah, world, worldly concerns.
Yes.
Can you read it again?
Yep. The more closely we are united to the Lord, the more clearly we seem to have our own identity. And yet, the more obvious it is to us that we belong to the Lord. It's like one of those wonderful paradoxes or something. That to me, that's the hallmark of any really spiritual teaching. If it's a paradox, and it's hard to get around it. And it's similar, you'll recognize this one from Divine Providence 309. If we believed that, as is truly the case, everything good and true comes from the Lord, and everything evil and false comes from hell, then we would not claim the goodness as our own and make it self-serving, or claim the evil as our own and make ourselves guilty of it. If we really believed that every thought and impulse and love and everything in us comes from somewhere else, from the angels coming from the Lord, or from the hells coming from a twisted way of being connected to the Lord. And I think that claiming goodness as our own and making it self-serving is sort of the negative side of any kind of self-discovery. You see goodness inside you and then make it self-serving. And the final set of teachings that I think are relevant to a proprial journey of self-discovery is the teachings about regeneration. So first of all, Heaven and Hell 598. The reason we cannot be reformed unless we have some freedom is that we are born into evils of all kinds. Evils that need to be taken away if we are to be saved. They cannot be taken away unless we see them within ourselves, admit that they are there, then refuse them, and ultimately turn away from them. Only then are they taken away. So that describes to me that the sort of the steps of that proprial journey towards a more heavenly proprium. Seeing them, just noticing, no emotion attacked. Oh, I see that this is happening. Oh, I see that that's happening within me. Admitting that it's there. And in the 12-step programs, they say admit it to the divine, but then admit it to another human being. And most people find it harder to tell another human being about their shortcomings than to tell the Lord. It's easy enough to say, oh Lord, I'm a sinner, look what I just did. If I say, Lori, you won't believe what I just did, that's a lot harder. A lot harder.
Yeah, because we know kings don't judge the same way.
That's right, you don't know what's gonna happen then. And so after you admit it to yourself, the divine and somebody else or not, then you start to just refuse it when it comes to you, and eventually you turn away from it, like, go away, I don't even want to deal with you. And so, okay, another one, hang on, that was from Heaven and Hell, this is from TCR 574. Reason 2 makes it entirely clear that we have to be regenerated. We are born with evils of every kind from our parents. It's their fault. These evils reside in our earthly self, which left to itself is directly opposed to our spiritual self. And I like the introduction there of the terms earthly self and spiritual self, which to me are equivalent to hellish proprium and heavenly proprium. But I just like that terminology, earthly and spiritual. Nevertheless, we are born for heaven. We cannot come into heaven then unless we become spiritual. And that happens through regeneration alone. It follows inevitably from this that our earthly self and its desires have to be tamed, brought under control, and turned upside down, which is also another way of describing the journey. Well, first of all, identifying what those desires are from the earthly self, and then taming them, and then bringing them under control and turning them upside down. Another sort of veterinary use, except I don't know that lion tamers turn the lions upside down, but it's a similar concept. Turn them
By the tail.
by the hook, shake it out of it, but it's the same kind of concept, like turn yourself around. So, given all of that, maybe proprium self-discovery could be the regeneration journey. Getting to recognize and know your hellish sense of self, and then apparently autonomously choosing to allow the divine to gradually replace that hellish self with a heavenly sense of self. And at the end of the journey, if the journey is successful, you're operating from the divine self, which is goodness itself. And so I'm glad that I was able to come to that conclusion about the proprial self-discovery, that, you know, it's regeneration. But that brought up a whole bunch of questions. So what's your thinking about this? Our ruling loves, the specific ones for each one of us, are they developed through the choices you make in your life, or is it something that's sort of given and assigned to you? Have you had any experiences of that in your own life?
Well, I took it to mean as nature or nurture. Kids learn from what's around them. So
you go with develop.
yeah.
Yeah.
So kids aren't born with hate or anything, or
Right.
racism or whatever, but they learn it very quickly by what they see and hear.
Yes.
So,
I feel like it's a hard question to answer because it's so hard, at least for me, to identify what my real love is. And so it's hard to answer the question, but I'd be more inclined to say that actually it is innate, and we are certainly influenced by the stuff around us, but that we need it alone.
I'm not surprised you said that, because I thought of you when I'm thinking about love's been given, because as I recall telling your story, but that from an early age you knew that you love babies, infants, anything to do with that, like as a child, right? You just,
Yeah.
And so that's continued on and
Right.
guided your decisions and things that you've done in your life. So that sort of thing seems to me, and
but I don't think it's specifically the baby. It's the emotions behind why you want to look
Yeah.
after children, because they're innocent, because you want to help. Like it's that side of thing. I think it's more the love. It's not because you want to help babies. It's because of the behind the scenes stuff. That
Right,
goes
and that's like the bigger picture, but as we
Yeah.
said, every person has a different ruling love than anybody else, and so I think it is refined, maybe. To something as specific as
Oh,
the
yeah.
babies or something like that.
Yeah.
Often,
right.
I don't know.
I remember big debates through my education, you know, in the new church education system about that. Like you can choose your partners, people with same ruling loves, like. Is it because you developed that together, or is it because you were born that way, you were born for each other, like that kind of thing? Like, are you supposed to discover what it is, or are you supposed to develop it? Both.
Yeah, yeah, I go with both of that, exactly, you know,
Yeah.
it's, there's a certain innate ruling love you would have, but it is a. I think it's not immutable, right?
Yes,
You know, just because you were born with love of this, doesn't mean you can't change it, that's the whole point of the Jesus's manifestation in the scriptures, is that everything is changeable. You can, you know, you married the wrong person, you know, well, if two people work on it, right? It does take two, I get that, you know, but they can grow together. So. You say about babies, and it's like, well, yes, you love that. Is that your ruling love? It is a
Right.
dominant love, but is it like, if I put it in my terms, you know, I've always been about cars, right?
Right,
You know, so it's like, but that's not what rules my life. I don't make
Yeah,
my
sure.
decisions based on the car I'm after. You don't make decisions based on what baby you can look after, things like
Right.
that. So it's like, there is something that's rules over those things in our lives.
And that's where I say it, but I guess it's part of the not being sure what my real love is.
oh, did we lose Margaret?
You lost her.
Maybe she could have needed to help Dad or something.
Oh, sure.
If he'd been resting, he could have come out of
Right.
it into a weird blank space.
But yeah, I don't feel like, this is kind of where I am curious to know other people's insights as to whether they have identified their real love, like, can we actually, and I just haven't, or is it not for us to know specifically, or like, I don't know.
Yeah, well, that was very similar to the next question I had, is why are our deeper loves and selfhood not always apparent to us? Well,
Maybe
one thing
because-
Go
I was
ahead.
thinking maybe because if we did specifically know it, it would actually become selfish. Because then you might focus on it and think, oh, this is my ruling love, I'm doing good because of this ruling love. And then you could expand on it the wrong way, and you could have just.
Yeah, turn the good into your own instead of sort of, yeah. Well, I sort of went back to that number in 427. That in the world of spirits, you are sort of, you go through the states that, like the ones during your physical life, one after another. After a while, though, you settle into a constant state that accords with ruling love. So that I feel like our sequence of states as we live our lives could be what's getting in the way. We're so understandably focusing on what's around us, what's required of us in our job or career or whatever, worldly concerns, maybe societal expectations based on gender or ethnicity, you know, like whatever. I live in the city, I'm supposed to be a bad guy or something like that. Or whatever it is, that all of those kind of things can get in the way, and that's why we maybe can't settle into really understanding it. And maybe it's kind of along the lines of what Carolyn was saying, in order to protect that very internal place where the divine life comes into us. Like if this, where was that number? This is in Heaven and Hell, talks about there's a very inner place where the divine comes in. And then it arranges all the things in the other layers of your spirit. What is arranged and provided by the Lord at this center does not flow into the open perception of any angel, because it is higher than the angelic thought and surpasses angelic wisdom. So also, reverse engineering, that there are things that are within our spirit that we are not able to perceive, because it's above where we are. So for angels, they can't perceive how they're receiving divine, because that's above angelic wisdom. And for us, with our worldly life, we can't really perceive what's going on in the higher parts of our mind, because it's way above our thought and wisdom. So maybe we don't ever really know, but we get some clues, like whatever it is. I love to garden and okay. I'm not really a person that loves gardening. I never did really. But I do love going out there and pulling weeds and like clearing it out and like,
Yeah.
and I keep thinking this is just like regeneration. This is like spiritual life. Like get rid of this stuff and see what's beautiful there, you know. Don't ask me to specifically know which plants to water and which ones to leave alone and where to plant them and all of that, but deep within there's like a desire to improve things or something. I have more discussion questions, but it's 10 to 1.
Mhm.
No,
No,
it's not.
10 to 12.
We need to.
Yeah.
Mum,
And
so thanks for the talk, but that was getting a little bit, well, she said confused, but
Yeah,
his brain got overloaded, so.
Yeah.
yes. And here we go, adjusting this appearance of time.
So the thought that's come into my head since Todd was talking about. What's the phrase, nothing is immutable or whatever,
Mm.
like anything can change,
Mm.
is that. I feel like we're kind of assuming we and people all have good ruling loves, but we know that there are evil ruling loves.
Mhm.
But I also know that the Lord doesn't predestine anybody to hell, and so. You know, it's that combination, so like,
Right.
there couldn't. Or can there be an innate evil ruling love, because if it were innate, then that person would be predestined to hell, or is it about having this ruling love because of. What is it, inherited evil, whatever you call it, but that's part of their trajectory that this person has to fight against, but then really the deck is stacked against some people and not other people, and so it's almost going to head right now. Yeah, well, hang on. Yeah, you have thoughts about stuff.
No,
While you're breathing.
well, like I'm just trying to follow your logic
Yeah.
chain of inherited evil ruling love equals predestination for hell. And that's the bridge that I was trying to cross and going, is that, I'm not saying no, I'm just trying to ask myself, does that actually hold up? Because when I think about loves of any kind, and I haven't gotten as far as ruling loves, but like the writings are clear that loves, evil ones, hide.
Mhm.
Right, they're very good at disguising themselves and being undetected so that we don't get rid of them. And so it's like, well, okay, when you asked earlier, like, why can't we see our ruling love? What went off my head is, well, maybe it's because it's evil.
Mhm.
You know, we have an evil ruling love that's just hiding itself away, and it's good at that. I know it's not very happy, is it?
No.
But that's why I kept it to myself. And I'm also not sure that's true. I mean, it's true that evil loves hide.
Yes.
But can you be born with an evil ruling love and therefore predestines you to hell?
No, because
Well,
you learn it. You can't be born with it. I don't believe that.
You can't be born with what?
I don't think you can be born with evils but you will gather them in the world by what's around.
No, writing's
Inherited
very-
evils.
writing's
Yeah,
very-
no, I don't follow that because
Yeah.
it's inherited because of what, like,
Your
I-
circumstance.
I don't like the way the wording is of it, because when you're born, there might be spirits, but it's grows here, and I find that when you say that, it's bugged me for years and years and years.
The idea that you're born with evils.
Yeah, like
And
the way that it's
tendency.
written, it sort of can give people a pass in a way, I find, where, yeah.
How does it give them a pass?
Well,
It's not my
because
fault.
I'm born with it,
I
it's
was
not my
born this
fault,
way.
so.
Oh, well, sure, that's not what you're supposed to.
No, but it's the way it's translated, it's bugged me for years. and
Because
years.
it says that we're born into evils of every kind. So, I
Yeah,
mean, like, it's not like it's ambiguous on the point, but you're right, it's not a pass. It's a responsibility, saying it's not your fault you were born this way, but it is your responsibility to do something about it. That's kind of,
you gotta be
Yeah.
better than your parents, basically.
yeah.
Everybody's born, as far as I everybody's, born with tendencies towards some evil as well as.
Because they learn it when they're here.
Yeah, I disagree on that. I guess we just have to agree to
Yeah.
disagree.
A thought that I've had, David Miller and I have talked about this quite a bit, is that this term evil, maybe in English or whatever, but has immediate associations of bad, wrong, damned, terrible, awful, evil. Ew, they're just
See where you're
evil.
going with this, yeah.
Maybe if you think of it as limitations, it's not as bad, evil, terrible. It's just something you can deal with.
I
Okay,
would like to
here-
see
here's
what the actual words are in like the Latin or the Greek or the whatever.
Oh,
because
mal, something to do with mal, like not good, opposite of bono.
yeah, so it might be translated wrong.
No,
So-
well, I'd say in English, the word would be evil, but it depends how you want to think about it. Okay, so I'm sorry, this is a whole nother class,
Mhm.
Excellent.
but next time, next year. But okay, the teaser, no, okay.
Okay.
There's only one human that is perfect and not limited in any way, the divine human. Everything that emanates from the divine human is limited because is not divine. Creation, humans, dogs, just limited, trees. Limited in their humanity because they're not divine. So we are born into limitations of every kind because we are not the divine. Jesus maybe was born without limitations, but the rest of us, limitations of every kind. And so our appropriate journey is to identify what those limitations are and not accept them as who we are, but to move on. When David Miller and I talked about this, he said he used to really like that concept of its limitations, but he's found that after a while it does what Carolyn says, it gives people a pass, like, well, it's just a limitation. I can't be God, I can't be perfect. It's just a limitation. But to me, it helps with feelings of it's impossible to make this journey, to do this thing because I'm evil.
Well, that's where you have to go back to the one you quoted earlier
Yes.
about you're not.
You're gonna.
Yeah, if you believe as is the case,
Yeah.
you don't make evil your own, and you don't make the good your own, and it's all,
Yeah.
okay, and it's a very freeing passage from that stuff, and it's that it is a very difficult space to hold the responsibility without the blame.
Yes.
But that's what the writings give us.
Yeah.
It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your kind attention.
Yeah, no, hey, thank you for giving us, for presenting and giving us a different voice. They had the Journey program where they heard my voice every week for
Oh.
7 weeks. Both in church and in here, so they needed a change of diet.
Oh, there we go.
So I very much appreciate that.
You're welcome.
It's good to have you. So this is your last couple of weeks though, huh?
Yeah, 2 weeks from today, I'm flying away.
So.
As I was saying to Ralph earlier, I'm just gonna try and live in the moment and enjoy each moment.
Good on you, as. That's the way
Everybody- as we should be,
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, good on you.
Good. Well, the honesty will get a break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The poor people, okay. Yeah.
No, it's good. So. I guess Margaret is not there, so we can close out the Zoom. No.
Wish you had-
Good city, be here.
is she?